My name is James V. DeLaura, 77 years old, and I live in this beautiful adult community called Cedar Village. I live here with my beloved partner, Dolores D., of 28 years. We're going to be here 7 years in June. Okay, well, between Dee and I, we have 11 grandchildren. And that keeps us pretty busy. If we're not babysitting one or two of them, we're attending things that they're involved in, like basketball, volleyball, swimming, dancing, the dramatics. They're involved in a million different things, which is great. And we love to attend and cheer them on. Okay, well, there are some things that we're together on and some we're not. Dee likes to read. She's a reader. I said, I like to write, so I'm a writer. I said also, I'm very involved, very interested in politics, so I spend a lot of time watching the news, and Dee isn't. So she likes to read, so she'll spend a lot of time reading and on the computer playing games and things like that. There are things, though, that we share. We like to go on cruises. We like Netflix. We like to watch series on Netflix. Also, one of our big things that we like to do is go to the beach. We love the summer. We're beachgoers, and we really enjoy that. Our favorite beach is right here, is Seven Presidents Beach, right here. When I was 17 years old and just graduated high school, New York City Police Department came out with a program where they were hiring males only back then, between 17 and 21 years of age, that they called police trainees. This is not to be confused with police rookies. These were going to be civilian jobs. They were going to train these young fellas to work inside different facets of the police department, inside headquarters, detective units, precincts, and things like that. So I took the test when I was 17 years old. It was a competitive test. I passed and I got on a list. And when I was 19, civil service takes time. So 2 years later, when I was 19 years old, I got called to be hired as a police trainee. I was in the first group. There were 24 of us. They put us in the police academy with three groups of rookies. We went through the police academy. We did everything the same as the rookies did, except firearms. When I graduated from the police academy, I was assigned to the Brooklyn Communications Unit, where we took all the calls for administrative offices and emergencies. I was there for a year, and then they transferred me to a precinct where I worked inside the precinct and got to know the inner workings of a precinct. And then, as scheduled, the plan was, the trainees on their 21st birthday would go to police headquarters and be sworn in as a police officer, which I did with my parents. So on my 21st birthday, I was sworn in, and for an unknown amount of time, I was the youngest police officer in the entire New York City Police Department. Because you couldn't go into the police department until you were 21, and I was just 21. So then I went out to, I started my career as a police officer. I went to different precincts. A few years later, I got promoted to sergeant. After that, lieutenant, and then pretty quickly after that, I was promoted to captain. When I was captain for a while, I retired and I went into private security. And getting a job as Director of Security in corporations, coming from the police department as a captain, really helped me out. And then I had a career of about 29 years in security until I turned 70, and then I said, all right, it's pretty much time to retire. I was promoted to captain in 1985. Within the same month, I had 3 children. My youngest boy was diagnosed with neuroblastoma, children's cancer. And they said his life expectancy was a year. And it was a really tough year, probably I was going to say the toughest in the police department, but probably the toughest in my life. And towards the end of the year, he was very, very sick, and we knew it wasn't going to, he wasn't going to be around much longer. So I went on family leave for a while to stay home with him, and then he passed. And then a short while after that, my family leave was up, and I couldn't go back to work. I just was so devastated, and so was my family, my other 2 children. So I just put my papers in and I retired. That was the end of my police career. I didn't work for a year, but after a year, I said, well, I have to go back to work. I can't. So I went out and I started applying for jobs, and I got hired pretty quickly, Director of Security, and I went to for different reasons. I moved along, and I went to always as a head of security and safety for 29 years. And then finally, as I said, when I reached the age of 70, I said, okay, well, it's time to retire. I had 3 children, and when they were young, I used to make up stories to try and teach them lessons. The stories were about, the first story was, I was teaching them about how to add numbers to 10, because I figured that was a basic in math. And that story, years later, turned into The Land of Numbers. Another story that I made up was about a turtle who wouldn't eat his meals and lost his strength and collapsed and had to be rescued. And that book, years later, turned into Tippy the Turtle. Another story that I told and made up was about a baby fish who the mom let him outside to swim in front of the house, but to stay in front of the house, and he didn't, and got himself into some trouble. And that book, years later, turned into Finley and the Big Bad Shark. So what happened was, when Evan passed away, and my other 2 were older, the stories kind of died with Evan. I didn't make up any more stories, and I didn't recite those for years and years, until my 2 other children got married and I started having grandchildren. So now, with a captive audience, I resurrected my stories. And at times when I would do that, my daughter especially would say to me, Dad, why don't you publish some of those stories? They're such great stories and they're lessons. And I was like, I don't know, but anyway, came a time when I retired. I was 70 and wasn't doing all that much. And there was one day I was at my daughter's house, and again, she started with the publishing. And I said, I don't know. I said, you know what, do you have children's books here? She says, I have plenty. So she gave me about 8 or 9 different children's books. And I sat down and I read every one. And I said to her, these are really fun books, interesting books, but there's not one of them is educational. it was at that point that I decided I'm going to see about publishing, because my books are educational and they have lessons. So without saying anything to my daughter, I went out and after a while published my first book, The Land of Numbers. Okay, well, obviously I never published a book before and I really didn't know how to go about it. So what I did is I started going online and Googling publishing companies and reading about what they offered and how to go about getting them to publish you. And I must have looked up about 25 to 30 companies. And I started eliminating them one by one. Some were out of the country, some said they didn't accept unsolicited manuscripts, and little by little I dwindled the number down to 6. I sent out, mailed or emailed 6 of my manuscripts for The Land of Numbers, and I got back 4 contracts. So then I said to myself, all right, well now I have to make a decision. So I really started investigating the 4 of them, and little by little I decided to go with Christian Faith Publishing. And with them, I published the first book, The Land of Numbers. Still, nobody, my daughter, no one knew I was doing this. So finally, it took about a year to get The Land of Numbers published. And they sent me, I had several copies, which I eventually gave to family members. But the most exciting was the first day. I went to my daughter's house with a manila envelope. And I walked in and we're talking and I'm holding the envelope. And she says, "What's in that envelope?" I said, "I don't know." I opened it up and I handed her a finished copy of The Land of Numbers. She was blown away. She had no idea. It was one of the most fulfilling and happiest days of my life when I did that. And then I did that with my other children and Dee's children and relatives, and then sent copies out. I had 4 younger sisters. I mailed them copies, and it was just a wonderful, exciting experience. Well, as I said, I mailed these out to my sisters. 3 of my sisters lived in Florida, 1 lived in Hawaii, nice. But my youngest sister in Florida was a kindergarten teacher. So I mailed her a copy of The Land of Numbers. After she got it, she calls me up and she says she didn't know, they get this book that I published. So she calls me up and she says, "Jimmy," she says, "I got your book. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I didn't know you did this." And then she says to me, she said, "Do you know that your book meets the core requirement for kindergarten?" So I said, "Janine," I said, "I don't even know what a core requirement is. What is that?" She said, "A core requirement is something that is required in a classroom. They don't tell you how to do it, but your class at the end of the school year has to be able to do it." She says, and a core requirement for kindergarten is what they call ways to make 10. They have to know how to add numbers up to 10. She said, in your story about King 100 and the grand ball and the numbers going together, 9 and 1 and 8 and 2, she says, it meets the core requirement. It's perfect. So that was very, very exciting to me. And because of this new information, to try and help me market my books, I started sending out introductory letters about the book to parent-teachers, teachers associations, and things like that. And I think to date, it's probably the best seller of my 4 books. Well, all right, there came a time when I had published The Land of Numbers, Tippy the Turtle, and Finley the Big Bad Shark. I wanted to do a fourth book. I wanted like even numbers. I said, I want to do number 4. The other books I had a head start because years before they taught a lesson. But now I was, all right, I want to do the same thing. I want my book to be educational and I want to teach a lesson, but I didn't know where to go with it, you know, and I kept thinking of, well, what could I write about? What could I write about, you know? Manners, about children having manners, and I just couldn't. So there was one day, I was talking to my grandson, and I think he was in 1st grade, and I was asking him, I said, how is school? How do you like school? He said, I like it. He said, but I don't like this one boy in my class. I said, really? I said, why? He said, well, he's very mean, and the teacher yells at him all the time, and if we have to line up, he always runs to the head of the line. And so I said, so he was kind of a bully. And he says, well, I don't know what a bully is. I said, bingo, here's my topic. And that's how I decided to write Benny the Bully Bull. So now I had a task ahead of me. What kind of story and how do I do it? So I don't know how I selected a bull, maybe because a bully, it just came to me. But I had to put the story together of what did the bull do? How was he mean to other animals? And what changed his mind? And all of this I put together. It was a lot of work, and eventually I published Benny the Bully Bull. Well, when Dee and I moved here, we found that they put out a magazine every other month, and the residents were able and encouraged to submit articles on anything you wanted, anything that you thought would be of interest to the other residents. In addition to that, they would select a topic for the next edition. Things like, tell us about your first pet, and you know, where did you go to school, anything to generate. So I like to write. I said, oh, this is going to be good. So I started submitting, I started answering the topic of the month or bi-monthly. And then I would submit, I said, I'm going to submit an article or 2 about my police experiences. So I would submit that, and I would do that. I would submit 1 or 2, and then the topic of the month. And I was doing this for, you know, several months. And then the young ladies who ran, the magazine was called Cedar Village Voice. The young ladies who ran the Voice contacted me, and they said, Jim, they said, we're getting a lot of good feedback about your police articles. Residents really like it. So would you be interested in having your own column? I said, wow. I said, really? They said, yeah. I said, would I still be able to? They said, yeah, this would be a thing we would do every issue if you have something. And so we decided on a call to what to call it. We decided to call it On the Beat. And we picked out a logo. They sent me a whole load of logos to like, so I picked out one of a jolly young, chubby little police officer with a nightstick. And from there, I just continued with it, you know. And sometimes I'd have 1 or 2 articles in, and sometimes I even had 3 or 4, I guess if they were a little short that month. And I'm continuing to do it. I love it. I love it, and it's a lot of fun. Okay, well, let me tell you how the memoir started. So I'm writing these articles for The Voice, and they put out an issue every other month, and usually I have 2, 3, on a rare occasion 1. But I'm banging out articles like crazy, and I'm way ahead of them. And now, not only am I doing articles about the police, I'm starting to do articles about things that I experienced when I was head of security in different companies, writing articles about my books as I was publishing them during this time. So I had all these articles, and I have them in the computer, but then I wanted hard copies too. So I started printing out hard copies. And then I said, all right, what am I doing with these hard copies? So I got a binder, and then I started putting them in the binder, and then I started putting them chronologically. And little by little, I was thinking, I said, this is starting to become a memoir, I said, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should do it. So I went to the library, and I started looking up memoirs, because I had, to see what does a memoir look like. And there were a lot of different variations. Some were in in a novel, some were in chapters, and some had breakdowns so mine kind of fit the category. So now I also had files of different certificates and letters and awards and things that I got, and I started putting them in the thing. It started growing and growing. And then I thought about, can I market this? Can I publish it? And I said, well, so I called Christian Faith Publishing, and I told them what I was doing, and I said, would you be interested in publishing this? And they said, yeah, we would. So I said, all right, let me think about it. And then I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I really want to market my children's books. I said, who's gonna? I said, I'm nobody famous, so why would anybody want to read my memoir? So I decided that I'm just going to do it. And what I did is I made several copies. I sent a copy of it to my sisters in Florida, and as I would update it, I would send them the editions. And then I had 2 copies here, one that stays here all the time, and one that I've given to relatives and friends here. And it's gotten pretty thick. And I give it to them, and they said, how long can I have it for? I said, as long as you want. I said, so if you want to read it, you can take it for a couple of days. Most of them had it between 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know how often they read it, but so that was it. So that's how my memoir is, and it's still ongoing, but I enjoy that as well. Well, that's kind of hard, because it really depends on what they want to write about. I would say, if I had to give them any advice, I would say write something that you care about, that you feel strongly about. It will come out in your story. It will come out in your book. But I have a bit of advice I'd like to share. I didn't realize this. When I wanted to publish my book, I didn't think anything of it or care about marketing. But since my books are published now, and I want to market them, I get inundated with companies that want to market the book. From anything, they want to make an animated film about it, they want to put me on a show with a talk show, they're going to do this on Facebook, they're going to put me in bookstores, they're going to put me in book shows, and it's very hard to know. And I found out too, a lot of it is a scam. So my advice to someone who wants to write and publish a book is try to get a company, a publisher that will also market the book for you. Christian Faith doesn't do that. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Christian Faith. They're a great company, and I've enjoyed working with them. They've been spectacular. Especially, the hardest thing for me in publishing the books was not the story, because I had the text down. I mean, they would do some grammar corrections for me. But the hardest part was the illustrations. I knew what illustrations I wanted, but I'm not an artist. So I had to communicate to Christian Faith what I wanted. And they would do their best and send it back to me. And then I would make changes and I'd send it back to them again. And then little by little, I got to the point, and I have to do this with 4 books. You know, the scenes and the animals, and little by little, it got done, and I was happy with it. So in that sense, I don't regret going with Christian Faith. They were an excellent company to work with, and I would recommend them. But if you're someone who's starting out and doesn't know about anybody, I would try and go with a company that not only is going to publish for you, but also market for you.